GDP was a wonderful catch-all for, is the economy growing? Are we producing jobs? Are people happier? Is there opportunity flowing? So GDP was a great measure in the 1900s for, are we improving as society? And more than just the economy, it was a really great catch-all. But around the time of technology, call it the late 1900s, early 2000s, GDP completely detached from the human experience. So for example, here's an example of where GDP doesn't really work. Lots and lots of people in their smartphone have replaced their diary, their television, movies that they buy, all with free stuff that comes free on the smartphone. So those desires are being met by digital assets, although there's no money changing hands, which means something's being fulfilled in the economy, a fulfillment's happening, but without any money changing hands, and it's not at all reflected in GDP. A flip side of that is we're going to have self-driving trucks in the next 5 to 10 years, and that means that money will change hands in order to move goods from point A to point B. GDP will happen, but people's lives are worse off if you're a truck driver. So GDP is actually becoming more and more separate from the reality of what it is to be human. Capitalism was this wonderful, wonderful system that is like the best system we've ever created as a humanity. However, capitalism gave birth to its child called technology, and technology is now changing the entire game for what it is to, for the way we run society. So number one, we have to get rid of the measure of GDP and come up with a much better way of measuring whether the society is doing well and people are happy and people are prosperous, and we need to optimize and build a society for human outcomes, not for, just purely and simply, is the economy expanding or contracting? Are we moving forward as a civilization? Are we building a future that we want to live into or not? We need a better measure for how we're going to do that. The other thing we need to look at is, I don't think universal basic income is a good idea, but maybe something like that. Universal basic income is the idea of just giving people money every month. And I don't think that's a good idea because large companies will use it as an excuse to pay people less. So for example, we already know that when the government subsidizes living wages in America, Walmart just says, okay, great, we won't pay you a living wage because we know you get government subsidies. So if you give everyone $1,000 a month, then Walmart, Uber, all these big companies will use that as an excuse to deduct $1,000 a month off of people's livelihoods. So it won't actually solve the problem. And it's also not necessarily the best way to solve the problem, because all you're doing is trying to artificially create income in people's lives so they can go out and buy stuff and keep the GDP machine going. But what we do need to do is think about, we need a system of capitalism that doesn't start at zero and doesn't start at poverty. So we need capitalism, but the starting point for capitalism is not being on the streets or being in a place of poverty. The starting point for capital, we're a rich society. We have technology fulfilling all of our needs. We actually have empty houses and empty cars and empty stuff that we could be utilizing better. We need to figure out how do we use all this technology that we've created to build a system that is fundamentally meritocracy and capitalistic, but it's not starting at zero. And what success and the measure of success is not purely, is the economy expanding or contracting?